am absolutely pumped because today we are going to get the chance to introduce you to our latest product called Entity Hub that really empowers enterprises to take control of their entities so they can just rock this world of AI. Today, we're going to cover a bunch of different things. We're going to talk about why entity optimization matters. Jasmine, the product manager, is going to introduce Entity Hub to you, talk a little bit about why we built it and how it was really informed from our customers. How we then sort of like what are the nuances around the features. And then, good news, we're going to do a live demo so you can see it in action. We absolutely love questions. First of all, we want to know where are you joining us from? I see we have people from Ontario, British Columbia, Texas, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Germany, San Diego. This is awesome. We are so excited to be bringing this to everyone around the world. If you have questions as we go through, please put them in. We will be answering questions at the end. If I see something pop up that we need to do in a timely way, Jasmine, I'll let you know and we'll jump into that as well. Let's go ahead and get started though. Jasmine, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So, as Martha mentioned, my name is Jasmine, and I'm one of the product managers here at Schema App. And Entity Hub is the thing that I've been working on for the last while. So, I'm super, super excited for this launch that we're having today. And what you're looking at right now is a knowledge graph, and it describes me as an entity with attributes and properties that connect me to other entities, both in the real world and on the web. So, from here, you can see that I'm Canadian, that I'm an alumni of the University of Guelph, where I also worked on the Links project. And I helped with the creation of ontologies and taxonomies for giant knowledge graph projects for the humanities studies. So I know a thing or two about ontologies, but the term ontologies actually means different things depending on if you're in philosophy or in information science. So I've used an example of entity linking here to describe ontologies as being the same concept as the ontologies in information science on Wikipedia. Lastly, you can see I have a colleague relationship that connects me to another entity who is joining me here today.
And that's me. I'm Martha. As I mentioned, I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders here at Schema App. You can see on the bottom, I have a technical background. I went to MIT as well as Queens for engineering. And I grew up at Cisco. So I spent 14 years in enterprise, really kind of trying to drive innovation and agility. A lot of what I learned there is what we've applied to Schema App. I know a thing or two about schema markup. And I used to drive a 1965 Austin Healey Sprite. And my actual car was in the movie called Losing Chase that Kevin Bacon directed. And so hopefully you're going, oh my goodness, I can win the Kevin Bacon game, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. And I love it because that's inferencing that you figure it out because you understand the relationships between the entities, me, my car, and the movie. And that's the same thing that Google does, that the large language models do, that AI does when it's trying to answer your consumer questions. And so this is, I think, a great example of how we're going to talk about the power of the knowledge graph with regards to sort of how it's really important and strategic in this new time in search. So let's go there. Let's talk about like how is the world changing? And so I think the piece that is so important is that AI search is now powered by entities and not just keywords. And Google sort of and Microsoft stood on stage in May and said everybody needs to do structured data because it will help you get visibility and help you perform in our AI experiences. And some maybe say why? Well, we think it's because they're using that data to have confidence and be able to scale sort of everything that they're doing. And so I like to think if we're thinking about an enterprise, those of us in SEO, we have to kind of think beyond sort of just like the rich results, but really think about like the semantic understanding that the schema markup does. And so you could actually say that schema markup is the bridge between your brand and AI understanding, which is so important, again, as you're trying to drive visibility in this new world. Now, again, don't take my word for it. Let's look at the research. So AISO sort of, talked about sort of how in their research they saw that when there was really robust schema markup, that visibility and ChatGPT increased. And so I love this because in this day where we don't have metrics from ChatGPT, it's still showing us that structured data is one of those foundations. In a different study from Bright Edge, they also found that robust schema markup included higher citations from AIO, and that if you adopted entity based SEO, the authoritative content was 3 times more likely to be cited. And so I love that this research shows that schema markup provides that increased visibility across these different AI platforms. Now, why, you may ask? A lot of the semantic schema markup, or what we're going to talk about today around sort of entity linking, results in your schema markup producing a knowledge graph. So, similar to how we introduced ourselves and how you figured out that you can win the Kevin Bacon game. And that in this hype cycle for AI, knowledge graphs are on the rise. And so then I can sort of deduce that, the reason why Google and Microsoft are so keen on us using structured data that helps them build a knowledge graph, which then is helping them sort of accelerate and stay ahead in AI. And so this is why, graphs are so important and why entities, what we're talking today with Entity Hub is so important because your knowledge graph is only as good as the entities that you define and manage. It's around like, garbage in, garbage out. So we want to make sure that we're putting high quality in so you that get your brand gets high quality consumers, engaging with your content and getting that done. And so that's really what we're going to talk about today is how your content knowledge graph, when you manage those entities, produces this rich data layer that powers AI and in essence drives your business. So at Schema App, we like to think about, entities and schema markup and content knowledge graphs about like unlocking different areas of value. So when someone talks to me about like I do schema markup, I'm really wondering, they're at that base layer, right? They're sort of optimizing what's on a page. They might just be optimizing to get a rich result. And the powerful kind of unlock comes when you add in this entity linking, element to your schema markup. And don't worry, Jasmine's going to define this next, so we'll kind of jump into it. And when you do this dot connecting, so again, think of those lines, those relationship definitions that we made sort of in our introductions, you build this content knowledge graph. And when you have this powerful, relationships defined between entities, you're being really clear about what the data representation is. You unlock values in SEO. So we're familiar with these rich results, non branded queries, AI overviews. You also can unlock insights into content or sort of topic authority with regards to sort of, what is your content talking about today? You can imagine the complexities like in an enterprise environment with that. And then the last piece is that you can also unlock AI efficiencies because you can reuse this content knowledge graph by having other AI systems like Copilot or on site search query it. And I'm super excited. The next thing you'll hear from us is about how Schema App will be building an MCP server for our Schema App customers. More on that in a later conversation. So this is sort of again the value that we're looking to do so that your content is optimized to get the most visibility. But it all starts with this foundation, this like moving or elevating your schema markup with entity linking so that you truly have a content knowledge graph. So Jasmine, can you kind of walk us through, what is entity linking? How does that work? So everyone's on the same page as we go into Entity Hub.
Absolutely. Can you imagine if we just introduced all of this jargon and did not define it? That would not be a kind thing to do to our audience. So, entity linking is the process of identifying the entities that are mentioned in your content and connecting them to corresponding entities on the web. And what we mean by corresponding entities is that if they have been defined in other external authoritative knowledge bases like Wikipedia, Wikidata, or even Google's own knowledge graph, we can obtain those identifiers and embed them in your schema markup. So we're making it super, super clear to the machines that are consuming this data exactly what it is that you're talking about within your content. So what does this do? This ensures that you have a highly descriptive content knowledge graph. Just using schema markup isn't enough to get you there. You need to include the entity linking in order to really, really obtain this value. So you've got a nice little visualization of what this could look like on a DeWalt product description page where handsaw is a concept that is well known enough that it's also been defined in other sources. So we actually introduced an entity linking feature a while ago, and we got a ton of really, really positive feedback from it. And one of the main values here at Schema App is that we want to innovate and help enterprises stay at the forefront of this rapidly evolving search landscape. And while we were kind of coming up with how we were going to build Entity Hub, we talked to a ton of customers within content and SEO and digital marketing teams to learn about the tactical and strategic objectives they needed our help to solve. And in having these conversations, we realized that entity linking was actually providing us with the data to support doing all of these things. So SEOs want to be able to track SEO performance, but through the lens of entities, not just keywords, right? We're revolving past keywords at this point. Content teams want to be able to obtain entity audits to know exactly what they're talking about and where. And those of you who are at the director or VP level are really, really concerned with ensuring that you're optimizing your site for AI search with a high degree of confidence as things are so volatile, as it's changing so rapidly. And go
So
ahead,
good
Martha. I know you're
news.
so excited about this.
So good news. This is why we built Entity Hub. And I'm so proud at Schema App that we get to innovate with our customers to bring what they need, sort of ideally ahead of the market, ahead of others. And so Entity Hub is this powerful entity optimization solution that's going to put in the hands of you, like managing those entities and really being able to build this reusable content knowledge graph. So without further ado, Jasmine, can you walk us through more about like what is Entity Hub, like what are the values of it, and then let's get into the weeds of what are the features and tools.
Absolutely. So I think I like to start with what really makes Entity Hub unique. And all of the tools that make up the solution are prioritizing entity first optimization. So we know that search, the way that people are accessing information, the way that people are querying for information, it's all around entities. It's not just about keywords. And that needed to be at the center of what we were building. The output is going to give you this amazing, high quality, well curated knowledge graph that then can be used across SEO, large language model applications, as Martha mentioned. MCP is going to be a big thing that we're tackling in the near future. And finally, we know how important it is to be able to give you performance data through the lens of entities so that you can tie this to the measurable SEO outcomes. So these are really the three primary pillars that we were aiming to support with the solution.
So this is like a real switch from like we've been talking about sort of search being about entities, but this is now giving people like the power to actually do that. Is that sort of what you're telling me?
Exactly. And if that also had too much jargon in it, let's give you this TLDR, which is basically that the whole reason that Schema Apps Entity Hub exists is to build a robust knowledge graph of your content so you can optimize for the topics that matter, show up in AI and search results, and then drive measurable performance across your digital ecosystem. And all of the tools that we've created are doing a fantastic job of this so far.
Amazing. All right. So how does this work? Like how do you get started, Jasmine? Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you're asking. So, we have a four-step Entity Hub process, and we have tools that take you through each step of the process. So, we begin using entity linking to identify the entities in your content. You can then leverage the entity manager to manage or curate these entities to increase accuracy. You can access reporting using the entity reports to figure out location, frequency of coverage, and then tie that with search performance metrics and our entity performance analytics tool to leverage this great data driven decision making tool for actionable insights to help you optimize your content. So, I'm now going to take you through what each of these tools kind of does with a bit more detail, and then we're going to jump into a
Awesome.
live demo, which we're super, super excited about. Okay, so starting with entity linking. So this is a feature that is part of our authoring process. So it's added to our highlighter authoring tool, which allows you to implement markup at scale. It's going to identify those entities that have also been described externally from sources like Wikipedia, Wikidata, and Google's Knowledge Graph. It's then going to embed those entities within your schema markup. And the outcome of this is that it supports SEO, particularly for non-branded queries related to those entities. And more importantly, it's resulting in an even more robust knowledge graph so that the quality of the data analysis is that much higher. So, one of the ways that you can actually use this for some data analysis is with our entity reports. So, the entity reports are basically an entity audit. This is going to tell you what has been identified and where, and it's got two different views. So, the entity view shows you each entity we've identified, the number of URLs we've identified them on, how we've categorized it using the schema.org vocabulary, and most excitingly, the same as relationships to those other authoritative knowledge bases, Wikipedia, Wikidata, and Google's Knowledge Graph again. And then the URL view is going to take the same data, but show it to you just from a different perspective. So this shows you for each individual URL how many entities we've identified and what those entities are. And this is a great way to get a quick understanding of the depth and quality of your content. So, as part of reviewing these reports, you also might realize that there's certain entities that you want to go in and further edit or modify or curate. And this is why we have also built the entity manager. And the entity manager is so essential to the success of your entity hub experience because this is what is going to put you in the driver's seat when it comes to maintaining and curating the data. So, especially if you're in like the finance or healthcare space, this is very like risk averse, right? And we know that AI overviews, especially, have a tendency to surface information that isn't always correct. So, in order to make sure that you are empowered to be able to be in the driver's seat, be the human in the loop, we want to make sure you can go in and make modifications to the names, the relationships, the categorization of these entities so that they're fully representing how these entities should be represented per your organization or brand voice.
So, Jasmine, this is really like taking that automated discovery where we identify, but then giving you control as to like what do you actually want it to show up as for your brand. I love this. This is great.
So once you've gone through the process of curating and selecting which entities you really are wanting to optimize, that's when you'll dig into entity performance analytics. So this is a dashboard with reports that help you understand your entity coverage, aggregated SEO performance again through this lens of entities. You can compare entity performance over time, and using this data, you can also identify performance anomalies to help you figure out where it might be worth investing more time within your content and SEO strategies around the entities that have been identified.
And actually, it was fun, Jasmine. I was actually in entity performance analytics this morning, and I was looking at the different cloud groups and for Schema App, and I was like, "Well, that's really interesting." Like, I'm surprised that like e-commerce is showing up as like one of the key drive entities like for our impressions. And it was then able to like go and actually use the different reports to say, well, how many URLs are we talking about e-commerce? Like our primary pillars are finance, healthcare, and B2B tech, and then we're like, "Oh, it's only on one." And then we were looking at we're like, "Well, how is it only on one? Like, why is it, how is it actually performing?" And then we actually went to Schema Performance Analytics and was like, "How is that looking?" And it really allowed me as someone who's like answering the question of should we be like, evolving our strategy on like looking at different industries to actually be able to look at literally the industry, like the topics that would give me the data to say like, are we performing on it well today? So it was really a powerful way, I think, of seeing this in action and how it really relates to strategic conversations that we're having as a business, but with data, and with through that kind of topic or entity lens. So just loved it. All right. So with that, we're going to switch gears and do a live demo. Everyone loves a live demo. So we're going to pretend we're an SEO manager, not the CEO of a company using it to decide strategy. That was my example I just used. And Jasmine, walk us through sort of, how I might navigate through it. If this was like, I'm thinking, maybe my leadership's talking to me about sort of, how do we know how we're performing or if we have the right content on the site in order to be an authority and drive consumers to these different areas. So I'll hand it over to you. Walk us through what this looks like in real time.
Absolutely. So we're going to be looking at some kind of like mock fun sample data using some Schema app URLs. And what you're looking at right now are the entity reports. So as the SEO manager, I've already gotten my entity linking implemented within my structured data, and now I'm ready to do my entity audit. So the first step would be to come into my entity view. It's going to load all of the entities we've identified in descending order by URL count. So the first thing I would probably want to look at are what are the top entities that are being identified and are they what I would typically expect for, the target audience that our content's supposed to be hitting. So our top entities all have to do with SEO and artificial intelligence and semantic technology and Google search. And I can immediately tell from this that there isn't anything popping up that's catching my attention as something that I wouldn't expect to see. So, an interesting use case actually for one of our customers was they realized one of their top entities was COVID 19, and that was no longer important to their organization. And we went back and looked at some of the content and realized that they were using it as a way to like situate blog posts during this era of COVID, in this time of COVID. And instead, it was just making their content stuck at a certain point in time that was impacting the fact that it was really intended to be evergreen. So then they could take that as a signal to go in and remove the mention of this entity because it actually was not relevant and shouldn't have been showing up as frequently as it was. So if we're looking at this from another direction, we can come into the URL view. And this is particularly helpful, I think, for folks who are like maybe they're new to the organization. They don't know the content with as much depth as those who have been there for a long time and know it really, really well. And from here, you can see for each individual URL, the number of entities that were identified, what those entities were, And from there, get an understanding of the depth of it. So whether you need to go in and revisit it, is the entity count low? Do you want to go in and make sure you're mentioning other entities that are relevant to like the target topic area? And so from both of these methods, you can get a pretty good understanding of what you're covering. And then you can dig into the why with your team and review the rest of your entities to make sure that you're optimizing for what actually matters for you.
I never really thought of that. Like you could use this also for onboarding, right? Like, hey, like you need to go learn about these topics, right? About what we do. What an amazing resource for marketing teams. New use case. Love it.
Yeah, we're finding more and more all the time because really it's giving you metadata about your content, right? So metadata is super helpful in so many different areas depending on the job that you are trying to accomplish. So one of these jobs is to make sure that things are well curated and are showing up in the way that you want them to. So another really great thing with the entity view is that we're showing you the links to the same as values. So let's take search engine optimization as an example. Again, maybe I'm new, and maybe actually we see this a lot with healthcare organizations where people will be like, I'm just an SEO person. I don't know what an EKG is, right? And then you can open up the Wikipedia page that's describing it, and it's going to give you the rundown of the content, the topics, the like keywords that you want to make sure you're familiar with if you are somebody who's involved with content. We can also take a look at how this is showing up within Google's knowledge graph. So this will take you to that entity in the search engine results page. Many of them often have AI overviews associated with them. They often will have a little knowledge panel off to the side. And sometimes you can even get a quick understanding of who some of the competitors might be that are also targeting this particular entity within their content. And finally, and my most favorite one, mostly just because I'm a semantic technology nerd, is Wikidata. So Wikidata is really the only purpose of it is for machines to be able to access this information. You'll notice it looks a little bit similar to Wikipedia, but it's basically just tables that are showing you for an entity that has a name and an identifier, all of the properties and attributes that are connecting it to other things. So this is telling machines that the entity of SEO is an instance of field of study, a subclass of internet marketing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, can be helpful if you're trying to get acquainted with some of these concepts yourself, but this is primarily intended for machine consumption. And that's why this is also one of the linkages that we have prioritized across the entity linking results that we provide you with.
So it's really like giving me a way to understand like how is it being defined. So it's not like a black box. It's a glass box. You can see exactly how it's being defined, exactly what's being pulled into your schema markup. And then can I manage it in any way, Jasmine?
Martha, I'm so glad you asked. You're like setting me up for the best segues. So there's two different ways that you might want to manage your entities. One of them was with blocking. So here at Schema App, we have a fantastic authoring tool called the highlighter, but it doesn't actually exist in Wikipedia, Wikidata, or in Google's knowledge graph at this point in time. So it has been identified. If I just do a search in my search box here, sorry, I typed in my wrong area, and it's linking to three different resources that mostly have to do with the writing device. And this is not really the highlighter that I want to be linking to. So
No.
if there were other, if like we did have a Wikipedia page to represent this, I could go in and make edits, which I will get to in a moment. But in the meantime, because I know we don't have any of these, I can just take an action to block the entity. And once it's blocked, that will be reflected within your status. And it's going to prevent any markup from deploying to any of your web pages, even though it has been identified on these 14 URLs. If you're curious as to what that schema markup looks like, under our actions button, you can also click show schema. So this is going to show you the structured data that's going to get embedded into your web pages, although it won't in this case because we've blocked the highlighter. And we can also see the list of all of the URLs where the entity was identified. If we're wanting to go in and explore, we can copy this, throw it into another spreadsheet or other reporting tools, or even SPA if we're wanting to further explore performance there.
SPA is Schema Performance Analytics. So it's our analytics platform for sort of tracking your performance of how schema is working. All right. So I've figured out how to identify them, right? We've now managed them. What's the next step, Jasmine?
Well, we are going to first do a quick edit here. So let me find an example of Martha. So Martha is being identified because she does have a reputation that precedes her in the SEO community, and we love that very, very much. But I know that her reputation precedes her to such a degree that she also exists within Google's knowledge graph. And I want to make sure I'm linking her entity to this link within the Google's knowledge graph. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go back into my report, click actions, and edit this entity, which will open up the entity of Martha Van Berkel in my entity manager. So this is where we can get into additional curation work. So I'll click the entity button. I can change the name. Maybe she wants to go by Martha VB instead. I could change the type that's categorizing her if maybe she's become an organization for some reason. And I can also add, remove, or edit the same as values here. So in this case, I'm just going to paste in the URL that represents that entity within Google search, hit done, and all of those edits will be saved. And the next time a human being or a bot visits URLs that Martha appears on, all of the markup will be updated to reflect those changes.
Amazing. All right, last step, and then we're going to get to questions. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. Let's go have a look at entity performance analytics. I was sharing how I was using this morning to kind of see how our website was performing for a specific area of an industry to see if we want to kind of double click there. Walk us through how that works.
All right. I just realized we only have 5 minutes left, so we're going to do this super fast. But fortunately, it's super easy to understand the data in here. So this is going to give us an understanding of coverage, so total URLs, number of entities identified, URLs with and without entities, which are also reflected in a speedometer visualization if you don't feel like doing the math yourself. We have the entity performance table down below. So this is telling you for all of the URLs where a particular entity was identified, the total clicks and impressions and average click-through rate. And this is reflected in 3 different entity word clouds, which also are showing you the clicks, impressions, and click-through rate data. And what you might see here is that while Google and JSON LD seem to have the best metrics for clicks and impressions, if I scroll down to click-through rate, it's actually showing me a very different picture. So again, letting you kind of explore your content and explore your performance through the lens of entities as opposed to just keywords. I'm going to take you down below to the performance by entity section as well. So this is going to show you performance over time, also give you a breakdown of the performance of each individual URL where these entities have been identified. And it's going to give you the ability to actually search for individual entities sorry, I have my,
We have time too, Jasmine. We have
oh,
15
do we?
minutes.
Amazing. Okay. I
This
thought you
was
guys
like
were short
this
on
is where
time.
I had my aha this morning. So don't rush through because I think it sort of like allows you to select those entities that you want to look at it. And there was a question, so maybe like as you go through this, it was sort of like how are the kind of clicks and impressions assigned to the entity? Like who gets credit for like all of them? So maybe you can kind of explain that as you sort of go through the charts.
Absolutely. I was having issues with my clicky button here. So let me just make sure I can select a couple to show you as an example.
Just go with that. We're good.
All right, so we've got AI and LLMs here. And so it's now going to show me the total aggregated impressions and clicks. Keep in mind, this could be double counted because there's a chance that LLMs and AI have been identified on all of the same URLs. And it's going to show us the kind of comparing those over time. We can scroll over to see the performance for each individual day, for the clicks, the impressions, and as well as the click-through rate. So I can then take this as a signal to maybe explore what's going on with a dip or a significant increase in click-through rate on, I guess this is showing for the URLs where LLMs has been identified. So these are all signals that can help contribute to you kind of looking back over the success of your content and whether you are intending to maybe tackle particular topics for your SEO or content strategies, making sure you have the data to back up those decisions.
Well, I think one of them is like if you're targeting a specific topic area, right? Then is then like has related entities, it really allows us to kind of say like, well, what's it look like today? And then if you do the hard work, right? And I know in enterprise, like sometimes that takes like 4 or 5, 6 months. Once you start seeing that produced, you'll see it covered on more URLs, right? Through the URL report, you'll be able to then sort of, see that. Then you can come here and be like, oh, are we actually seeing it move the needle? So instead of just like, again, having to have a spreadsheet that you're tracking, which URLs did we update or long, we can actually do it. Again, how are we talking about that entity? Now I mentioned topics. So let's sort of switch gears and let's just talk last piece around like where are we going next, right? So what's coming next? We've shown all that that we're launching today. What's on the roadmap, Jasmine? And then we'll wrap us up and get to questions.
Yeah, sounds great. So the next thing we're going to be tackling is a topic taxonomy. So with the entities, it gives you a really great understanding of the performance for these individual entities, but we recognize sometimes that's maybe a little bit too granular. I had a great conversation with one of our clients just this morning where they said, we want to know how we're performing for locations as a whole. So it was like, great, this is exactly what we're looking to support you with the topic taxonomy, because you might have 50 different location entities. And if we implement a taxonomy that clusters those together, then you're able to look at the performance data through not just the lens of entities, but also the lens of the topics as a whole. And this will also contribute to the next version of our entity performance analytics, which is going to center the entities and the topics, which again are going to assist with this kind of semantic clustering of related entities, related queries that are all kind of grouped together based on the topic that they're associated with. And this is not a string matching exercise. This is making sure that the semantic values are being embedded within here so that you are actually getting a comprehensive view of the semantic performance of your content. And lastly, graph visualizations. So, those of you who maybe are not super into reading the code definitely want to be able to see this with like a graphical interface of some kind. We know that that can really help you connect the dots, as it were, and help you again just kind of surface how your content is interconnected, how the entities within your content are interconnected, and will help you also identify where there are gaps or opportunities with a whole other way of being able to understand what is being described within your website content.
Oh man, I cannot wait. It's going to be so much fun. So just to remind you, like, why are we doing this? Like, what's the value that we're unlocking through Entity Hub is really around like scaling as well as controlling and curating, your entities at scale, really to drive visibility across the emerging AI platforms as well as search as we know it today. We also want you to be able to like look at your content through the lens of entities so that you can kind of, we talked about like onboarding, like learn about what content has it there, also understand where you have that topic authority, and really increase efficiency. And I think also I'm seeing like the partnership between SEO and content. Like these reports are creating new conversations between those two teams within our enterprise clients. And then the last piece is a really, high quality knowledge graph is absolutely essential for sort of, AI innovations, like whether that be sort of, again, those AI platforms in search, we're using it, or using our future MCP server in order to sort of enable your internal AI initiatives. Okay. That's what the content we had planned. We want to go to questions. There's a ton of questions here. Let's start with one, I think, for you, Jasmine. Someone was asking about, can a same as schema, so you're talking about like the entity linking, be included with other schemas like product aggregate offers? So, how does it sort of fit within sort of other schemas?
Yeah, so same as can be used basically anywhere you have an entity. And when you're describing something using schema markup, you're also describing it as an entity. Where you want to be using same as though is specifically to link it to where this exact same entity is being defined elsewhere. So for an aggregate offer, that might not make sense. Like I would think that an aggregated offer would probably be different for each product it's attached to. For an individual product, that also I don't know would make necessarily a great candidate because
A category, maybe?
the category could be also things like brand, right? So, like we had that example of the PDP page with DeWalt. And so maybe if DeWalt's like the brand, you could say, I'm selling this as a third party seller, but this particular product is the brand DeWalt, and that's linked out to these other same as values to make that super explicit.
I think the thing that makes us unique at Schema App is that like your schema markup is always going to be in context of the page. So it's not going to be sort of just like on its own, not kind of pulling up. All right, I have another one. Can we access entities via an API? So I did ask our CTO Mark this question to just like make sure we were good to go, and he said, yeah, it'll be available when we have our model context protocol or export APIs, and that everything we store is in RDF, and so that's really like a really accessible format to be able to be reused. So yes is the answer. Again, our goal is for you to reuse your knowledge graph in a really powerful way. All right, let's go to a different one. Jasmine, how is onboarding going to work with us?
Great question. So, this is a process where you would connect with your CSM, and they would take you through kind of an introduction of the tools. They would review some of the entities with you. And we do have an option to also purchase additional services if you're wanting additional CSM assistance to go through like the data curation and reporting process as well. So, you can either kind of initially get set up and then you're on your way on your own, or you can continue to have support with the reviewing and curation of your entities.
Great. Umar, you have a great question here. Their question is like, at what point would you recommend investing in a third-party knowledge graph solution versus building on a structured data layer? So good news, like Schema App is actually a knowledge graph company. So we have, a team of ontologists and experts in semantic technology. And so when you actually partner with us, you get both. You get sort of a, like focused knowledge graph company who happens to specialize in marketing. And, schema.org is really just that vocabulary that we're using. We can extend that vocabulary. In fact, we've done that to kind of build a knowledge graph for all of our internal administrative kind of functions. So we model every bit of information that we have here at Schema App. So if you're in the marketing domain, I would say like we are the experts in marketing and knowledge graphs. All right, let's go to a different one. There was one question that I thought was kind of interesting with regards to, are we pulling in other authoritative sources? So you mentioned Wikidata, Google's knowledge graph that we're linking to. Is there an opportunity for more precise or niche data sets to be included?
Ooh, fun question. So right now we also have just started including Crunchbase, and there's no reason why we couldn't explore that. It's something we'd obviously have to have conversation about because we're not actively looking to do this immediately. But we are big into data quality, big into making sure things are as semantically accurate as possible, and would be really interested in exploring it if you have some ideas of specific sources you'd like to use.
All right. Nikolai has a question. Is there a trial available for Schema App? We are an enterprise solution. So the answer is no, we don't do any free trials. But we are, again, if you're looking to do schema markup at scale and want to build and manage your knowledge graph, reach out to us. You can reach out to us at hello@schemaapp.com or go to our website and we'll have a conversation and see sort of if we're a fit for you and if we can help. All right, another one for clarity. Taxonomy, would all of us do something like put GPT 4.0 under large language model? How do taxonomies fit in this, Jasmine?
I think it depends on the direction you want to come at it from. So, some organizations already have taxonomies that they've developed themselves manually, and they would probably want to go in and also manually incorporate that their taxonomy. There's other people that we've worked with though who don't have a taxonomy and are looking for our assistance in developing one, and that's where leveraging something like a large language model could be helpful as a like first version to help you get started.
All right. We also have another Richard kind of asking again, can we incorporate private or internal knowledge bases? I think the answer is yes. Like we just need to know sort of what our customers want, and then we can kind of explore what we can do there. So again, we build things based on our customers' needs. And so if that's something that will help you clarify sort of what things are about, I know today we actually optimize a lot of glossary pages. And so our entity linking that we call internal entity linking, where we refer to an internal definition is something that we can do today. So again, if it's on the web, no problem. We got you covered. That's something that we can do well. Kenneth has a great one here. Any plans to integrate the web analytics outside of Google Search Console? Insights on entity performance from a conversion perspective would be helpful.
Yes, definitely something we're interested in, like building up on. So with the Google Search Console data, what we love about that is that Google still has like majority market share. I think Martha, you'd said it's like still 90%. Yes, AI is taking over a teeny weeny bit of it, and it may get bigger, but for now, Google Search Console still is like the most trusted source of information for those foundational clicks, impressions, click through rate, visibility kind of metrics. But we are also exploring the ability of pulling in some data from analytics, maybe pulling in data from Bing. There's so many opportunities to be able to give you even more performance data to give you a more comprehensive picture. So if there's specific sources that you're looking for, let us know and we'll take that into consideration in our roadmap.
Oh, this is a great one from Elena, Jasmine, for you. Is there value in establishing same as relationships with other content on your site, e.g., multiple pages on the same and similar topic? Maybe you want to talk a little bit about Entity Home.
Yes, so it really depends. I think what would be more appropriate for you here is another feature that we haven't gotten into as much on this call, which is the internal entity linking. So you have web pages that define entities that are unique to you and your website. And that is the entity home, right? So you might have people pages, for example. Martha has an author page, and that's the home of her entity on our website. And we probably want to link her to other web pages that mention her, but we may not want to use the same as relationship there. It might actually be more appropriate to say, for example, on blog post that she's authored, this is a blog post with the author Martha, and to have that link back to the web page that represents her as her entity home. So same as is great for saying that an entity that's been defined internally on my site has also been defined elsewhere, but may not be as appropriate for kind of establishing internal relationships there.
I think the topic, like this is the primary topic page. You call it the entity home. I jokingly call it the canonical entity. Like this is sort of the primary reference, kind of like when we think of canonical URLs. I think that's going to become more important as we really think about brand in AI and like where do we want to be known for? Like which page do we want to send, for queries about Martha, right? We really want you to go to, my author page that describes who I am, has my bio, has all those things in it. So I think it'll be interesting how that evolves. And the concept of Entity Home will exist within Entity Hub. It's something that we actually will take a lot of our customers through because we're identifying through some of the reports that like you're mentioning the entity on lots of places, but there's not like one place where you're like this is like the primary place that you're describing it. So I think there's some interesting opportunity there. Someone asked us about pricing. We don't publish our pricing, but yes, it is by entity. If you want to know more about our pricing, my sales team would love to walk you through sort of what we offer, if it's a fit for you. So feel free to go to our contact us page or just reach out to us on Hello. We'd be happy to walk you through that. All right, we have a couple left here. Um, oh, let me go. Oh yeah, what is recommended to get started with Entity Hub? That's a great one, Jasmine. So like, how do we get started? Like, if we're perhaps not a Schema App customer today, like, where would they get started?
Well, you would get started by becoming a Schema App customer, believe it or not. So the first thing we have to do, to kind of like tie things back to that value house, the foundation of that value house that Martha showed earlier, you need the schema markup layer first. And this is helping to categorize your web pages. Are these articles, are these author pages, are these products, right? And then once that's done, we then build on that existing layer by doing the entity linking. And that's what's then going to give you access to the rest of the tools and features within Entity Hub.
Amazing. Nikolai's asking, like, do we have an agency solution with lots of enterprise clients? Yes, we have different ways that we work with agencies. We'd love to talk to you and find one that works. So again, just reach out to us. We're happy to explore that. Um, Another one here I have, maybe this is the last one, is Jasmine, like what have some of the early adopters like been talking about like the value? We'll finish on this one, and then if there's other questions, we can follow up after this. But Jasmine, tell us maybe one story to wrap us up about like what some of the early adopters are saying.
There's one that's sticking into my head because I just had it yesterday with one of our customers who's been really working with us super closely on Entity Hub. And she told me that doing this work made her feel like she had entered the matrix, where she was able, as like a content person who used to just think of content as I write the content, I put it on a web page. And it kind of ended there. She said, I'm now thinking about the code portion of it, the fact that how intentional I'm being about the entities that matter in my content, how that's being represented, not just on a singular web page, but across the entire website as a whole. And so it's helped her with communicating between her technical teams, between her content teams, because SEO often is playing with a lot of different people or a lot of different teams at once. And it's like helped her with that cross-functional communication, and also helped her kind of when it comes to the strategy work have a lot more confidence in making requests from those teams and knowing that she's making the right decisions when telling them what they need to be tackling next.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for leading us in developing this amazing new product. We're super, super excited to bring this to our customers, continue to help you lead in this new world of AI. If you want to know more, reach out to us, www.schemaapp.com. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Always love to hear feedback. And thanks so much for joining us today.